May not be able to do much about the weather, but we do need a better plan for putting out a burning city than waiting for rain. America is so partisan now that even when there's a disaster of any kind, so many people choose to defend their own team, even over. A lot of Democrats in this one-party state this week went right to, don't blame politicians, you can't do anything about the wind. Which is exactly half true. The wind part. Yes, fire is a tough fight out here, and yes, global warming absolutely makes it worse. But that's largely out of our control. What are we going to do? Pass a ballot measure to make sure Chinese stop burning coal? It's no wonder that in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now.
Bill Maher says he has identified one powerful force he believes is seriously harming California. And the surprising part is that most people rarely think about it. On Real Time with Bill Maher, the comedian tore into the issue with a raw and unfiltered critique. His analysis was sharp, direct, and likely uncomfortable for many inside the Democratic Party. So buckle up, settle in, and let's dive into it right now.
There is a deep state, which is the bureaucratic class that justifies its existence by making up new rules, and that's my job. It's the vast network of regulators, administrators, inspectors, contract reviewers, project managers, fee assessors, special commissioners, zoning officers, and consultants whose jobs seem to be to make sure nothing ever happens and then charge you for it.
Maher focused on what he considers the single biggest obstacle holding California back. Its deeply entrenched one-party system. In his view, party loyalty has grown so dominant that many voters prioritize the party label over actual leadership performance. He argues that this automatic allegiance has weakened accountability, allowing ineffective leadership to survive election after election. To him, that's not just a California issue, it's a warning sign for the broader party. He adds that when one party dominates for too long, bureaucracy expands unchecked. Agencies multiply, regulations stack up, and efficiency fades into the background. Innovation slows, costs increase, and everyday services decline. Maher's message is blunt. When power faces no serious competition, it eventually serves itself instead of the public.
San Francisco, the city's so nice you'll step in poop twice. There's an area where homeless people were urinating and defecating, and it was starting to annoy the people breaking into cars. So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system, $1.7 million for one toilet. And this wasn't some magic toilet that catches your phone when you drop it.
Maher points to a striking example. San Francisco once projected that installing a single public toilet could cost more than $1 million. Let that sink in. This is a city struggling with homelessness, public drug use, trash buildup, and sanitation problems. Yet even a basic restroom became a staggering expense. Maher uses this case to illustrate his larger argument. Excessive bureaucracy turns simple solutions into financial absurdities. Layers of permits, consultants, environmental reviews, and procedural requirements drive costs sky high. What should be a straightforward public health improvement becomes an expensive ordeal. As a result, progress stalls while residents continue to deal with worsening conditions. According to Maher, this reflects a structural problem where process outweighs results and taxpayers absorb the consequences.
So then a private company took pity on San Francisco and offered to build them their toilet for free. But after, quote, project management, construction management, architecture and engineering fees, permits, civic design review, surveys, contract preparation, and cost estimation. The free toilet was still going to cost almost $1 million. You know, if you tack on fees like that, you're not a city, you're an airline.
From Maher's perspective, this helps explain why so many of California's challenges remain unresolved. It's not just isolated failure, it's systemic gridlock. Even private citizens and businesses that attempt to fix problems often encounter endless administrative barriers. Permits, reviews, and compliance checks pile up until promising ideas collapse under their own weight. By the time approval arrives, costs have surged or momentum has disappeared. Maher argues that this paralysis is built into a system with limited political competition. Without serious electoral pressure, there is little incentive to streamline or reform. Bureaucracy becomes self-protective rather than solution-oriented. Unless voters are willing to question the one-party status quo, he suggests many of these problems will persist.
Feels like San Francisco is actually proud of being impossible. Asked about the toilet, a spokesman for the Department of Public Works said, "We are a city of public input." Okay, but I'm stepping in public output. Meanwhile, the median time to get approval to build a house there is 627 days. That's 217 days longer than it took to build the Empire State Building. You need 87 permits, 15 from the Planning Commission, 26 from the Public Utilities Commission and the Fire Department, 19 from building inspectors, 17 from the Public Works, 10 related to public spaces, and 1 from a guy in a t-shirt that says Federal Boob Inspector.
One statistic in particular stands out. Reportedly, building a single public toilet can require as many as 87 separate permits. At that point, the system begins to look incapable of correcting itself. When something so basic turns into an obstacle course of approvals, it raises serious questions about priorities. Maher argues that this outcome stems from leadership that focuses more on appearances and messaging than on practical governance. The unglamorous work of cutting red tape, streamlining agencies, and demanding measurable outcomes often get sidelined. Instead, symbolic gestures dominate headlines. The consequences are visible. Aging infrastructure, ongoing public health issues, and significant taxpayer spending with limited results. For Maher, it's a cautionary example of what happens when performance takes a backseat to presentation.
It's no wonder that in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now.
California's housing crisis further illustrates the problem. In cities like San Francisco, with a population exceeding 870,000 and an estimated housing shortfall of tens of thousands of units, only a small number of new housing permits are approved each year. At that pace, the shortage continues rather than shrinks. Maher raises a straightforward question. How can the state realistically solve homelessness without dramatically increasing housing supply? High construction costs, dense regulations, zoning limits, and local opposition often stall projects before they begin. Developers withdraw, rents climb, and vulnerable residents suffer most. While officials frequently speak about affordability and compassion, Maher argues that the regulatory environment makes meaningful progress extremely difficult.
But you also have faith in California Governor Gavin Newsom, did you not?
I'd love him as a candidate, yes. I mean, you're right. He's not exactly what I'm describing now.
Right.
I think he'd be a great candidate. He has shown in recent months the ability also to move to the center. He would have to do it a lot more. But as a candidate, he looks great. Great speaker, very forceful, can be mean, which is really important, and he can do it. He also has the backing, or certainly should, of the where the energy is in the Democratic Party, the far left, because, he's been out front on a lot of very liberal issues, which I think is great. Gay marriage here in California and stuff like that, pollution, all sorts of stuff that we believe in.
Maher has at times expressed admiration for California Governor Gavin Newsom, but he has also become more openly critical. In his view, Newsom's challenge is not intelligence or ambition, but ideological positioning. Maher believes the governor has aligned himself too closely with the most progressive elements of his party. The solution, he suggests, would be politically risky but clear: shift toward the center. Moving in that direction would not mean abandoning principles, but rather adapting to practical realities. By easing away from rigid orthodoxy, Newsom could focus on reducing bureaucracy, accelerating approvals, and implementing policies designed to deliver tangible outcomes instead of symbolic victories.
He does have a long trail to lose the baggage of governor of the most liberal state in the country. I tell him face to face, I've said it on the show, he went too far left for me often. But it is encouraging to see that in at least 3 places I can think of, he has moved it back to the center, but he's got a long way to go if he wants to do that.
Do you think a far lefty can win a national election in this day and age? A presidential election. Do you think that could happen?
A far left, you mean like AOC?
Yes. I'm just whether it's what you said about Newsom, whether it's an AOC. I mean, do you think somebody like that can win a general election for the presidency of the United States in this day and age? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Maher extends that argument to national ambitions. If Newsom hopes to compete in a future presidential race, Maher contends he would need to distance himself from polarizing culture war issues. Positions that resonate strongly in progressive California may not carry the same appeal in swing states or more moderate regions. Maher argues that by becoming closely associated with highly contentious social debates, Newsom risks limiting his broader appeal. National elections, he suggests, are rarely won through ideological purity alone. Without recalibrating toward the political center, Maher believes Newsom could struggle to gain traction beyond his home state.
May not be able to do much about the weather, but we do need a better plan for putting out a burning city than waiting for rain. America is so partisan now that even when there's a disaster of any kind, so many people choose to defend their own team, even over. A lot of Democrats in this one-party state this week went right to, don't blame politicians, you can't do anything about the wind. Which is exactly half true. The wind part. Yes, fire is a tough fight out here, and yes, global warming absolutely makes it worse. But that's largely out of our control. What are we going to do? Pass a ballot measure to make sure Chinese stop burning coal?
Maher also criticized the state's handling of major wildfires that have devastated parts of California in recent years. While acknowledging that extreme weather and climate conditions are significant factors, he argues that leadership must still be judged on preparedness and response. In his view, years of administrative inefficiency and planning failures left the state vulnerable. Prevention efforts were insufficient, response systems were overly complicated, and coordination lagged during moments that demanded urgency. For Maher, such crises expose the weaknesses of a bloated system. When government becomes consumed by procedure, it struggles to act decisively when it matters most.
Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in this state every year to people who I assumed were working on things like this.
Taken together, Maher's argument is direct. California's struggles, he contends, are not random or inevitable. They're largely self-inflicted. Prolonged one-party dominance, expanding bureaucracy, and leadership focused on ideology over outcomes have created recurring problems. From costly public projects to housing shortages and crisis management concerns, he sees a pattern of process overwhelming performance. Maher frames his criticism not as hostility toward California, but as frustration with unrealized potential. His warning to Democratic leaders is clear. A model that emphasizes symbolism over results may face resistance nationally. In his view, Reform, competition, and measurable governance are essential if the state and the party hope to regain broader confidence.